Even if you don't follow astrology very closely, you're at least aware of the Mercury retrograde periods. This is a time when you're told, be careful with communications, back up everything on your computer, that kind of thing. But did you know that other planets go retrograde too? Well, they do. And I want to hone in specifically on Saturn's retrograde cycle because it's going to go retrograde in a few days now on June 17th, 2023. And so I want to talk about why Saturn's retrograde cycle matters, possible challenges, and it is Saturn, so there will be challenges, and how can you best approach Saturn's retrograde period. So stay tuned for that. But first, hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stacyann, astrologer for women moving through transition and transformation. And my intention for this channel is to educate and inspire you no matter what stage of that journey you're currently on. Because who you're becoming is exactly what the world needs. Now, let's dive in. Saturn helps us mature through challenges. It teaches responsibility, sustained effort, boundaries, how restrictions can be a healthy response to life. And in so doing, Saturn helps us develop a sense of authority out there in the world. And Saturn spends about 2.5 years in a given sign. And each year, Saturn goes retrograde. And what that means is, from our vantage point here on Earth, Saturn appears to be going backwards. It's not really, but it does provide us with a period of time where Saturn's energy is more focused inward. And so because Saturn is a slow-moving planet, it goes retrograde for a very long time. As compared to Mercury retrograde periods. So Saturn typically goes retrograde every single year for about 4 to 4.5 months. And the themes that come out for Saturn retrograde periods is it kind of slows down that maturation process that Saturn is putting you through. So it's a time where you can study. It's a time where you're being tested. It's also a great time for innovative ways of thinking because we get a bit more detached from those status quo, the usual way that we are asserting our authority in the world. And so we get to experiment with a new way of doing things, a new way of asserting our authority. So Saturn retrograde cycles are just great for the development of that inner authority. Before you could take that outwards, it helps you kind of develop it inwards to help you believe in yourself, help you to take a practical approach on how you're developing and what needs to be developed further. It's a great way of looking at the Saturn retrograde periods. Saturn retrograde does not occur in a vacuum. It's important to look at the sign that Saturn is moving through and where that sign is in your personal chart. So for this video, we'll take a look at Saturn in Pisces. And Saturn went into Pisces on March 7th, 2023. And Pisces is the archetype of the dreamer, the poet, the mystic, and the drunk. And what Saturn is doing there in Pisces is helping you work through some of the shadow aspects of that sign. And many of the shadow aspects of that sign is not knowing one's boundaries, wanting to merge with all that is, which is great on one hand, but does not work in our kind of 3D reality. So Saturn is helping to work to kind of bring structure to this part of life for you. So whatever Piscean qualities around not having proper boundaries, feelings of being too sensitive, not being able to focus is also a big one, is something that Saturn is helping us with as it moves through Pisces. And it's going to take a while for us to get there. It's going to be in Pisces for 2.5 years. So not everything is going to be learned right away. It's a very slow maturation process. And so let me give you some additional dates around this cycle. And, because this is the first time that Saturn is retrograding since it's been into Pisces, this first retrograde period, I would say it's almost like Saturn is taking stock. It's looking around, it's had a chance to look around, and now during this retrograde period, it's kind of setting up the lesson plan. It knows where your weaknesses are, where your strength is when it comes to that Piscean area of your life. And it's putting the lesson plan together. And so, maybe this is where you'll have that first challenge of how to ground your authority in that part of your life. So it's a really important period to pay attention to, because it's going to set you up for the next few years that Saturn is moving through Pisces. So those dates are, Pisces, Saturn entered Pisces on March 7th. And that we could say is like the shadow phase, because we're going to go over the same area that Saturn visited in that early part of its cycle. And then on the 17th, we're officially in the retrograde period. So definitely we'll talk about how to best approach that next. And then a very key point in the retrograde cycle of Saturn is its Sun-Saturn opposition. And this is just the midpoint of its cycle. It's where things start to become more apparent. With Saturn facing the Sun, we become more aware of what's going on, what's the challenges, what needs our attention, and how to apply that attention in a very Saturnian way. So that curriculum that I've spoke about that Saturn might be helping you set up during this period, it's going to become more apparent at this time. And the date for that is August 27th. And then finally, Saturn becomes direct on November 4th, 2023. And then that's a time when Saturn's slowing down to go direct. And it's when you take what you've learned and now you bring it forward. And now you could start to practice things more out there in the world. So it's that switch from that inner development of authority and taking that outwards, and how we're gonna take what we've learned and start putting the pieces together, even though we know this process is just in its very much its early stage. Because Saturn is that planet of, I like to say, it's a planet of we could do hard things. So with Saturn, there's going to be challenges. It's just something that comes with the territory. And so when we talk about the themes that might be unfolding underway for the broader Saturn's transit through Pisces, they are going to be hard. If it's easy, or if it feels easy, that means you've done the work previously to get you to this point. So it does feel a lot easier. But typically with clients that I've seen and in my own personal life, Saturn lessons are not easy. They do require some sustained effort. It does require being pragmatic and taking a very sobering look at life and putting in the time and effort to see those results that you want, especially in that area that Saturn is working through for you. So what are some themes that might be underway for you? This is not an exhaustive list of themes, but these are some highlights of ones that I think will be up for many people. So the first one is taking responsibility for where you put your focus. I know we all have so many things that are pulling at our attention with our gadgets, with social media, friends and family. And so it doesn't feel like the time is our own, or it doesn't feel like we can control the place where we put our focus. However, Saturn moving through Pisces is going to help you to do that and have more sense of ownership, a sense of authority over your focus. So if that's a big one for you, it could be something that you are working on with Saturn through Pisces, and it will be hard. But the result is greater focus in being able to channel that Saturn and Pisces energy into something real and something concrete. So definitely take up that challenge. The next theme is doing the work to make your dreams a reality, right? When we think of Pisces being this archetype of the dreamer, just a huge amount of imagination and creativity happens for this sign, for this archetype. And so when Saturn gets there, it's like being able to take that creativity, channel it, and creating something real from it, something very concrete, and also something that can last the test of time. So it's a very important transit if you are someone who is very creative or who is very entrepreneurial, and you have these big dreams for what the world can be. And we need those big dreams right now, especially what we're going through with so many changes. We do need new ways of doing things, and Saturn moving through Pisces is going to be helpful in making that a reality. So dream big and put in the time and effort that it will take to make those dreams a reality. And don't get caught up when something doesn't quite work or it's less than perfect. Things are not perfect here. We don't have the ability to make things super perfect. So if you could just go with the flow, that's a very Piscean thing. As you're building, even if it's not quite what you are wanting, just know that there's still room to improve, there's still room to move forward. So don't get stuck in the imperfection. Another theme that might be arising for you during this Saturn and Pisces transit is maturing out of victimhood. Now, Pisces is definitely that sign where we have big hearts, we're very compassionate, and we also may lack some boundaries. It's easy to get caught up in that feeling of the world is against me, or nothing ever is working out for me. And those negative thought patterns, those negative beliefs sometimes are associated with the sign of Pisces. And this Saturn and Pisces transit is helping us see our part in that role as victim, right? And I want to be careful here. This is not to say that we're going to be blaming victims. No, this is not what it's about. But there is a point when as an adult, you realize that, the things that do happen in your life, that maybe you had some part in that, and not maybe, you have some part in that. Especially when we look at like relationships, right? There, 50% is you and 50% is that other person. And so, if you're having failed relationships over and over again, there's something to look at of like, maybe this isn't just happening to you, but how are you participating in that? And it's a time for us to have courage to move out of that and claim our sovereignty, claim our sense of authority, and not to be a victim. Right? And this is definitely setting us up for when Saturn enters Aries in a sign that is not at all about being a victim. So If that's been your story and working through some of these challenges around forgiveness and um, owning, taking your responsibility, owning what roles you've played for the life that you have, is going to be something that will be important, and again will set you up for when that Saturn moves into Aries next. The next theme that I want to touch upon is restructuring our boundaries. Yeah. Um, so a lot of us are feeling a little bit fatigued around our compassion. We have very big hearts, we're very sensitive, and there's so much going wrong with the world right now, and there's so much need in the world. And so there could be this feeling of just being tired of always feeling this compassionate, and feeling like your heart is so open, and not having the right boundaries to set. And even if you've had good boundaries before, there does become times where we have to renegotiate those boundaries, and you know check to see if they are still working for us, because boundaries are flexible. They're not something that you set them once and they're done. You're always having to check in to see if, is there another level of this? Do I need to restructure this in a way because I'm either open to something different now, or I'm no longer open to something, and I'm ready to protect my energy. I'm ready to focus my heart and compassion in a way that doesn't leave me fatigued or doesn't leave me open to others taking advantage of that. So look at where the boundaries are and how can we restructure them in a healthier way moving forward. And again, you have time for this. Saturn is moving slowly through Pisces and will be there for a few years. So take your time. It's nothing that you have to rush out and do, but just be more conscious of where you end and another person begins, and when you've had enough and when you need to be refilled. And the boundaries, setting boundaries and limits on that energy will truly help you do just that. And now the final theme that I want to share is respect and support for emotional labor. Now, we've seen our caregivers, teachers, healers, and anyone who is in that role of helper going through a lot of stress and strain in society. And we're seeing how this isn't sustainable without further support and intervention for those of us who do find ourselves in those roles. Now, with Saturn moving through Pisces, we're not going to be able to ignore this issue. And for you personally, on a personal level, what does that look like? Where are you lacking that support for when you are responsible for people who you're providing care to, or you have friends that rely on you for a lot of emotional labor? So it's having that conversation, connected to also the previous theme around boundaries, really seeing where you are with that in your process of inner authority, and claiming that as something to be respected, and claiming that emotional label as something to be valued. I think sometimes we do take the emotional support that family members, friends, and professionals provide for us. And I think with Saturn moving through Pisces, we're gonna really see how a society cannot be healthy without it, and how do we restructure the way that we're valuing or not valuing those roles, whether it's on that personal level or broader societal level. Now, the themes that we just discussed will be underway until Saturn leaves Pisces on May 24th, 2025. But I want to bring us back to present day and the upcoming Saturn retrograde, which again will go from June 17th to November 4th, 2023. And some tips for you. I have tips. I have some tips for you on how to best approach this particular Saturn retrograde cycle. So, first of all, trust your pace, right? But this is not a sprint. Saturn is a very slow moving planet, and it's going to be moving even slower in its retrograde period. So trust your pace and don't compare the progress that you're making to someone else's progress around those Saturn and Pisces themes that we just discussed. So take your time with it. It's really important. Now, in the day-to-day, you want to look at the opposite sign that Saturn is moving through, which is Virgo. So Virgo would provide a lot of grounding during this retrograde cycle, and it tells us about how we could approach this period. And so, you know, ritual is going to be important. Your daily practices are going to be important. Anything, a short project is going to be important. Anything that provides a level of grounding, a level of, you know, repetitive nature, something that feels good that you're able to do over and over again, is going to really help with this Saturn retrograde cycle. Definitely, definitely, definitely. And I say this about all retrograde periods. You definitely want to journal about it. You definitely want to write things down. You definitely want to have an inner dialogue with that aspect of self. And so, you know, the aspect of self that is working on something really hard, the aspect of self that is trying to develop into something more, the aspect of self that is trying to assert itself in the world, that aspect of self is gonna, you're gonna have more access to it. And so dialogue with what you're going through, what might be taking a lot of effort, what is stretching you, making you grow. And so write down your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs that are coming up during this time as it pertains to that Piscean area of life. And you will see how just doing that daily practice of writing it down will help you to see the progress that you are making. You know, I think especially in Pisces and Saturn wanting to concretize things that are happening for us relevant to that sign, it is important to like put that pen to paper. It is important to get the things that we're having happening up here or in here down on paper, so we have a reflection of it, we have a record of it as well. Because Saturn can be tough for some people, and especially Saturn moving to Pisces can feel a bit jarring. The energy is not, it's not an easy cohesive one. And so, you know, there's greater love and compassion that you will need to have for yourself as you move through this retrograde period, because things will fall apart, things will not go our way. You know, we're going to be working hard sometimes and not quite seeing the things taking shape, and yet we have to love ourselves through that. So that will be very important, to be very kind, gentle, and loving towards ourselves as we learn new things, as we get acclimated to the new thing that wants to be developed. Using creativity as part of the processing is also going to be really important during the Saturn retrograde period. So if you're feeling like things are bubbling up and you've written them down and it's not quite helping, how could you be creative with it? What creative aspect of life wants to come out? Maybe you're dancing, maybe you're taking an art class, but using creativity, which should be much easier for Pisces energy to do through this developmental stage of Saturn retrograde. And finally, a very helpful tip for the Saturn retrograde cycle is to wear the world loosely, right? And Piscean energy knows how to do this best, but you might forget it when Saturn is moving through the sign. So don't forget that, you know, things do happen out in the world. Don't take it so personally. Don't internalize all the negativity that's happening out there. You know, really focus in on yourself and being kind and loving. And just don't take it all so personally, right? Okay. Thank you for joining me on that journey through Saturn's retrograde cycle and why it matters. And now over to you. How is Saturn moving through Pisces occurring for you so far? Please comment, let me know, share down below. And if you're looking forward to the Saturn's retrograde cycle, tell me that too. I have to admit, I love Saturn as a planetary energy, and I do appreciate its developmental period of the Saturn retrograde cycle. So if you're one of those people too, share that with me below. Before you go, I have just two small requests for you. First, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and also share it with a friend. They will thank you. And also, I do have a free monthly newsletter that you could subscribe to called Connected Pieces. And it's a way for me to give you all the astrological content for the upcoming month in a very easy to digest format. And I also provide some info into what's bubbling up for clients or for me personally in my own astrology. And in a way for us to create this community around, you know, using astrology for the purposes of personal development and making these big shifts and transition in life that will be much more aligned to who we're becoming. So definitely join me there, and I look forward to connecting with you again. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful Saturn retrograde cycle. Yay. Bye-bye.